The $2.8 billion Ajaokuta-Abuja-Kaduna-Kano gas project is a 614-kilometer-long pipeline being developed by the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, to transport natural gas from southern Nigeria to the central and northern parts of the country. Therefore, an increasing number of stakeholders in the oil-rich Niger Delta region, which houses large deposits of this resource, that's exactly its sore point, and a worsening of a long-standing grievance rooted in the widespread belief that its rich natural endowments are being unjustly ferreted away to service the needs of some other parts of the country, who should have little or no stake in the matter. Joining us now for a perspective on this issue is Annkio Briggs, a civil rights and environmental activist, founder and executive director of Agape Birthrights, a non-governmental organization. Welcome to the program. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning, Abati.
Yes, it's good to have you join us again on the morning show. But before we talk about the AKK, there was a front-page story in the newspapers yesterday that we discussed, and that's about the bid round for the 57 marginal oil fields. And the reports indicate that the people of the Niger Delta are opposed to this. They are even asking for a 15% to be reserved for stakeholders from the Niger Delta. Before now, the Niger Delta Congress had even said that the people of the Niger Delta are opposed to this because at the end of the day, those marginal fees may end up being given out to people from other parts of the country. But the question that I asked yesterday is that, does the Niger Delta, does it have the capacity to manage these oil fields?
That's a funny question to ask, because then it brings me directly to ask the question, to answer the question by asking these questions. Who are the people that have the capacity? Is it because they are not from the Niger Delta? Then automatically, if you're not from the Niger Delta, then you have a capacity, and anybody from the Niger Delta does not have a capacity. Look, there is a grave injustice that has been going on in Nigeria, and we're just sick and tired of it. Now, this particular Ajaokuta-Kaduna-Kano natural gas pipeline is a project that NNPC announced in 2013. And if you remember, in 2013, I don't know when you got on board, but by this time, your former boss, Goodluck Jonathan, was the president of Nigeria when this first came on. But before that time, we've had plenty other pipeline companies or ideas on board. The Algeria pipeline that goes to Europe, cuts into Niger, and the West African pipeline and all of that. And when you look at what you mentioned, Ajaokuta-Kaduna-Kano natural gas pipeline, it's unbelievable that the word or the name Niger Delta does not even come into it, and yet this gas is coming from the Niger Delta. And you see that the word even southern Nigeria, from saying north, east, and west, is not even existing. So the government at time is always trying to completely, if you wish, erase the fact that the Niger Delta is in Nigeria, or that the Niger Delta is actually the south of Nigeria. Now, the fact that you had that, we all saw that headline, and we also saw the letter that was written to Mr. President by the Baramatu Kingdom. It is actually not just Baramatu Kingdom; it is actually from the whole of the Niger Delta, and we are in full support of everything that has been said in that letter, because you cannot have a situation where gas is going to be taken from the Niger Delta, and sometime in the future, even crude oil is going to be taken from the Niger Delta and taken to Lagos to Dangote's refinery. This is highly offensive. And if we also recall, some time back, MENT have also objected to the pipeline project at some time. What happens in Nigeria is that when the Niger Delta agitates against something, somebody comes up with something to calm the situation down. First, it was Ompadek in Babangida's time. Then it was NDDC in Obasanjo's time. Then it was Amnesty and Ministry of Niger Delta in Yar'Adua's time, which Jonathan carried on. And so right now, we are of the opinion, and actually that 50%, 15% should be reserved for the Niger Delta is not anywhere acceptable. What is 15%? You know, we should, at the minimum, have 50% reserved for the Niger Delta, while we continue the argument of resource ownership and resource control and self-determination, because these are the only things that is going to calm the Niger Delta situation. Because you see, a lot of us are getting better informed, and a lot of us know now that we will have to fight. When I say fight, I don't mean physically. We have to continue the intellectual agitation and approach to this. This is most unfair and most unacceptable. This government have come along. It has put a lot of things on hold that is in the interest of the Niger Delta. The cleanup, for instance, the gas pathway that was supposed to be in Delta State, the dry dock that was supposed to be in Delta State. All of these things have been kept on hold. And you have a situation where this government is pursuing taking the gas from the Niger Delta to develop Kano and Kaduna and take even the transportation, the rail transportation system. Everything is being done for the North with the money and the resources of the Niger Delta. And it surprises me that people actually think that when we talk, and if people now raise the issue of what has your governors done with the 13%, that it somehow criminally justifies the injustice that the Niger Delta is suffering. People have light outside of the Niger Delta. The Niger Delta people don't have light. Look at what you're showing on your screen right now. This is as a direct result of the refusal of the federal government to give license, to issue licenses to the people of the Niger Delta to, at the very minimum, provide oil, to provide petrol, to provide cooking gas, to provide kerosene for themselves, because it's been demonstrated that it can be done. And so why refuse us the license? It's being refused because it's going to be difficult to give it to somebody who is in Sokoto to come and have a refinery, a small refinery in the creeks of the Niger Delta. And so that is why they're finding it difficult to issue these licenses. This pipeline, at the bottom line, the truth of the matter is you can lay this pipeline from the Niger Delta to the moon, but you still have to put the gas into those pipelines for it to get to the moon. It is high time everybody, educated, uneducated, man and woman, realize and accept that they have stolen enough of crude oil and gas from the Niger Delta, and that it is time for the Niger Delta people to be able to use this crude oil and this gas genuinely for the development of the Niger Delta. There is nobody that is going to develop the Niger Delta for Niger Delta people. We have seen that very clearly. We must do it ourselves. We can't do it if we don't have access to the crude oil and to the gas. And so, yes, we are definitely very much behind what Baramatu has said and what any other group is saying, as long as it is in line with what I have just explained.
Thank you for that. You raise a really important point that if the Niger Delta is not referred to at all in the name of the project, the AKK project, it goes to show that the Niger Delta is probably not being considered in the operations. I mean, if it can be overlooked in the naming, it does speak volumes, and it is completely unacceptable. Now you're saying that instead of the 10% that was offered by President Yar'Adua, which unfortunately was not codified as it ought to have been in the Petroleum Industry Bill, which is still sort of hanging in the National Assembly, now you're demanding 50%. Can we talk about the concrete steps being taken to ensure that you get that 50%? Are there any plans or any consortiums going on to raise the money, because a lot of it is financial, to raise the technical capabilities at this time?
Well, first of all, I will not go into any of those details right now, but only to establish the fact that whether it is 10% or 15%, that it is not acceptable to us. Now, when you look at people that have acquired or have been given, let me withdraw the word acquired, because nobody acquired anything. Where the oil fields that have been given in the past, that they are trying to bid for now, if you consider them, the people that had them before, what money did they have before they were given these things? So whichever way they are able to bring in foreign partners and bring in the money, it's the same way the owners are going to be able to do it. It is highly offensive for anybody to look at people in the Niger Delta and think that we are so ignorant that we cannot be able to explain or understand what we want or explain what we feel is going on. Look, what does it take to put a consortium together? Now, if you go to, even if I walk into any country now and go to people, maybe Israel, maybe America, people who are interested in oil and gas, taking, for instance, that the right to explore for oil and gas in the Niger Delta is actually allowed for the oil-producing communities and states to have the right to exploit and explore for these things, the way the Chinese have been brought in the middle of the night in other parts of Nigeria to illegally take away resources from Nigeria, that people are now pretending that they have just found them. They haven't just found them. They've been stealing these resources for decades. So now, if this can happen, what makes anybody think that Annkio Briggs cannot have the connection, or actually does not have the connection, or will not be able to generate the connection outside of Nigeria, and explain myself if I have the right to go and do that and bring in any consortium from any part of the world? It is money they are looking for. It is investment that they want to put in. And oil companies are not charitable organizations. I've said this before. They are not charity. We want a situation where we can go into business with people who are interested in exploring and exploiting for the oil and gas. Why can we not have the state government having to go into bringing consortium to build railway line? Why should it be the federal government that is doing it with the Ministry of Transport? If these things are supposed to be in my state, who is the person who is now deciding how this thing should be done? So when people say, does Niger Delta have, those people that have utilized our oil for over 50 years, how many heads do they have? And how on earth did they get this so-called consortium and whatever to come into the Niger Delta, fly over our heads, go in, bring COVID-19 with them, and fly back out? And then people are telling us, do you have people in the Niger Delta? If you cannot see anybody else, please see me.
Okay. Well, what a good way to drop it there. I'll take you up on two issues, and I've always taken you up on this. A couple of years back, you got 13% derivation. What has that money been used to or how has that money been used to develop the Niger Delta? And I'm speaking about the governors because you wrote a letter to some of the governors recently. Secondly, I want to know the state of the cleanup in the Niger Delta region. How is the cleanup like?
Well, first of all, let me go to the 13% derivation. Anytime anybody have asked this question, I answer exactly the same way. Because you see, it cannot change because the question is not changing and the circumstances have not changed. And so the answer cannot change. And this is that if you take 100% of what I own, and then you give me 13% on the condition that you think I should be grateful for this 13%. I am not grateful for the 13% because in the first place, it is not your right to take my oil and gas 100% because you have written it so into the Constitution. When before this time, when there was cocoa and when there was granite or so many other things, that was not the case. So that's part of the answer. The other part of the answer is thrown back. If you're asking me what I'm doing with 13%, I want you to also ask the the federal government what it is doing with the 87%. Because you see, today we have 19 states in the north and 7 in the south, because the north wants to take more of what they are not even producing. And the north has 419 local government areas out of the 774 local government areas. They are taking more than they are producing. Kano is 44 local government areas. It is taking 44. And Bayelsa is 8 local government areas. Kano is taking 44% of what Bayelsa is producing, while Bayelsa is only getting 8%. So that's the answer. Until justice is done, that question itself will begin to be our people in the Niger Delta, and I'm talking to my people now, must begin to see this question as an unfair question, as a distraction. As a distraction. There is no place where there is no corruption and mismanagement. Even in the north, there is mismanagement. So for them to pretend that they are almighty clean is a lie. They are the most corrupt of all. And I say this and I take responsibility for it. They are the most corrupt because they have allocated to themselves more of what is in my region. That's an act of corruption.
But it looks as though you're exonerating corrupt practice by these governors over the years if you bring back that argument. Because they must be able to account for what they have done with the 13% taken so far.
No, see, if we continue to waste time on, and I see it as a waste of time, if we continue to insist on this, we are actually being unfair. Because you are saying that we should forget the corruption of the 87% and concentrate on what is called the corruption of the 13%. No, if we're going to fight corruption, let us fight even from the 87% before we'll even get to the 13%. That is my position. I'm not saying there is no mismanagement, but what I'm saying is that there is a marginal difference between the mismanagement of 87% and the mismanagement of 13%. Now, coming to the issue of the cleanup, I have said it over and over again that the type of damage that has been done environmentally by the UNEP report, that is an independent report that was done years ago, almost 20 years now, I think, but definitely more than 10 years ago. And a figure of how many $1 billion was put on it by UNEP. Today, that has increased because the value of the dollar today and when that report was done is totally different. Now, second, I am from the Niger Delta. If you give me a contract to clean up oil spill, and I do not bring in experts to do it, experts that have done it before, where this type of devastation that the UNEP report says will take over 30 years to bring back to its original state. If you don't bring in experts to turn it into drinkable water and you give it to Annkio Briggs, I'm not going to be able to clean it up just because I'm Annkio Briggs. So it doesn't matter whom they give it to. If they don't bring in experts, it's the same thing with the issue of the forensic audit on NDDC. If you are not going to bring in experts from outside that will do a thorough audit on the NDDC, and you use Nigerians, I'm telling you, it won't get anywhere, because the people that are knee-deep, neck-deep even, in the corruption of the Niger Delta Commission they are actually Nigerians. Some of them are Niger Deltans, I accept, but you cannot compare it to the non-Niger Deltans that are also knee-deep in this corruption. It's the same thing with the cleanup. It's the same thing with the 13%. If you want to ask me about the 13%, let the percentage coming to me be acceptable first. If it is not acceptable, you're distracting me. I don't mean you as a person. I mean the question is distracting. We're distracting from the injustice. We're distracting from everything that we have talked about. If you remember, when during the COVID-19 and when Wike was saying, look, when you're bringing oil workers, allow me to know if they have COVID-19 or not, and all hell broke loose. Now today, we are left in Rivers State battling with the deaths of many Rivers people in Bonny. So you see, we can't win. We are not loved. We are not wanted. And our people must come to that realization. The injustice and the perpetrators of this injustice are very much aware of what they are doing.
Well,
it is time that we know that we are aware of the injustice, that we must rise up and refuse.
Well, the point about injustice is well made, and there are even people who are not from the Niger Delta who think that, on the whole, Nigeria should address all of these issues at the heart of the national question. But let me take you back to the gas pipeline project. Yesterday, we had a gentleman on this program who had been a former group general manager, gas development with the NDDC, and with the NNPC. And he pointed out that, look, there is another stream, apart from the Ajaokuta pipeline project, that is supposed to address the interest of the people of the Niger Delta. And this is the Eket Umuahia Ajaokuta project, which will serve the interest of many communities in the Niger Delta. But some people say that, look, is it not even better, instead of this project, AKK project that has been on since the Shagari administration, to have the gas processing in the Niger Delta and then sell finished products to maybe the north, instead of the geopolitics that has now developed around that project. But the other issue that we should be concerned about is that there are groups in the Niger Delta that are saying, look, let them build the pipeline. Where would they get the gas to pipe all the way to Kano or even Sokoto if they want? Is that threat real?
Well, I don't see how that can be considered a threat. It's a fact. It's a reality. I have just said it here. It's a very simple fact. I also cited the refinery that is being built by Dangote. Unless if he intends to bring the oil from outside, my people are still saying, now where you go get the crude oil from? Because that is the question. Unless if it's going to be flown into Lagos from outside of Nigeria, but if it's going to come from the Niger Delta, our people are asking, where will it pass? You know, there is this saying that it was when the Ogoni people were agitating, led by Ken Sarawiwa before he was murdered, were agitating, that they kept hearing things are in the pipeline, things are in the pipeline. Well, you know, simplistically, things are in the pipeline. People will say, where the pipe they now? Make we go look for this thing where they for pipe. So that started the breaking of pipeline, because people have to be looking at this thing that federal government says is in the pipeline. So it's basically the same type of thinking. You know, if you say that you're going to lay pipeline from a place you're not even mentioning, Ajokuta, I mean, a Kogi state, you know, you are now taking gas from after flaring it for how many years? You're now taking the natural one that is just pure solid gas, and you're now taking it out, and it's passing in front. Look at the pipelines you're showing. People are living on both sides of these pipelines. And then you now take it all the way through so many communities, so many states, all the way. But you have not mentioned River State is not in the mention. Bayelsa is not. None of the producing states are in the mention until it gets to Ajokuta and Kano and all these places. And may I please inform you that China today, Chinese is knee-deep in this very latest pipeline. The Chinese government is the government that is the China Export and Credit Insurance Corporation are the ones that are producing about 85% of the money for this, and Nigeria is borrowing it. It's not borrowing it in the name of Kano or from products from Kano. It is borrowing it in the name of Niger Delta gas and oil. You know, whatever China is doing in other parts of Africa to take their resources, they better be prepared for the Niger Delta people, because it won't be easy for them.
Points well made. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, but we thank you very much for always obliging us.